Hey everyone, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 539 being recorded Thursday. It's a special edition, Thursday, April 4th, 2019. I'm Jim Tanis.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Sebastian Peak.
All right, and we're glad you could join us. We're a day late this week due to travel to San Francisco for the Intel event, which we'll be talking about a little later. Their Data-Centric product launch, a huge range of products launching to support their transition. So we'll be talking about that.
Yeah, it's amazing how their top end stuff is so inexpensive now.
A true value play from Intel.
Priceless, you might say.
Yes. There was I think it was an OnTech had their, before pricing was revealed, they had the price list for some of the parts, and they just listed arm, leg, rest of body. So some expensive stuff, but we normally record Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. UTC, now that there's daylight savings in the U.S. And next week, as we've said before, just a reminder, next week there will not be a show. We'll be taking the week off because there'll be more travel, and it's just impossible. I won't have time to just push it. So we'll be off next week and then back the following Wednesday. If you want to know when we go live, please go to pcpro.com/subscribe, where you can enter your email into our mailing list that we use only to notify you when we go live. We normally put a link to the video stream in there, which I screwed up this evening. I had the link to the last week's stream. So aside from that, usually that's the best place to find us. Otherwise, you can find our live streams on YouTube or on demand after the fact at YouTube or via your RSS feed. You can get us audio or video that way. But let's jump into the news this week, or the reviews this week, I should say. We have we have two official reviews, and then the third review topic is talking about Intel's stuff. But we'll start off with a review of a power supply that Lee did for us. This is the Corsair AX850 titanium power supply. Now, this is a new line of titanium rated lower wattage, well, relatively lower wattage power supplies from Corsair. They announced these back at CES, and the key here is it's titanium rated. We've seen titanium ratings on power supplies, but they're usually on the ultra high wattage ones, the 1600 watt supplies. So this, you're getting titanium rated efficiency at 850 watts. And he took a look at this one. Did anyone get a chance to look this over and want to offer any insights, or otherwise I'll just kind of push through it here?
Couple of things I'll just briefly mention. I read through. Oh, sorry, Josh. You go ahead.
No, I was just going to say push it real good.
Oh, well, I'm glad you got that in there.
Yeah.
It's a Seasonic design. That was one thing that Lee clarified this morning. Mm-hmm. And very, very good performance, basically. It's impressive to see, this level of efficiency and tight regulation, and everything was good. Just one very minor complaint he had about cables, but I was kind of doing some reading about that. This supply ships with those cables that have like two PCIe graphics card headers coming out of each one. So you have like a 6x2 times 2 coming out of a single cable, which technically is not a problem. And this is all pushing, it's all coming out of a single rail. So it's not really the issue that it once was. But if your preference is to have an individual cable for each of the two PCIe ins on your high-end graphics card, then you might have to get, an extra couple of cables for this. But that was the only thing.
And that's a relatively minor complaint, and something easily rectified if you're really concerned about it. One neat thing is that it doesn't have RGB, but it comes with replaceable side labels. So you get a blue, a white, and a red in the box that you can swap out, so they will fit your case design color scheme a little better. So that was interesting. The fully modular 10-year warranty. It does exceed that titanium rating for efficiency. Now, obviously, there's always the question of whether, for like a user, like a gaming PC or just like a single workstation, whether the ultra efficient power supply ratings matter, because it's going to save electricity, but you'd have to run it for so many years to make up the cost between it and maybe a gold rated. And is that worth the extra price up front? So So you'd have to take that into consideration. But it being efficient does mean it stays cooler. It's got the quiet mode, so anything below 40% load, the fan doesn't even spin up. So it's good for low energy, relatively low energy draws on quiet systems. 135 millimeter fan, and it's 249.99. So it's not inexpensive for that wattage, but it's a high quality part. You're going to be getting the highest quality components at that price. And Seasonic is the OEM in this particular model. It's always with companies like Corsair or any company that uses OEMs for their branded parts. You have to be careful they don't guarantee that Seasonic will always be the OEM or that whoever it is for their RAM. So basically they're guaranteeing a performance level, and they're going to make changes in their suppliers to meet that performance level. So if it stays at Seasonic, that's great. And if it's not Seasonic for future revisions, it's still going to have the same performance and efficiency characteristics. So something to check out there. That's the Corsair AX850 power supply, and it's also going to be available in 1,000 watt models as well. Same performance, other than the 1,000 watt total capacity.
Real briefly, I was just going to add that I would not be surprised at all if this ends up being a Seasonic, just because of the rating and the 10-year warranty. And they're well known for reliability and that level of performance. And it reminds me of that last review that Hard OCP published. I think it was last week, right before they officially closed up shop, which was revisiting a 10-year-old Seasonic power supply, and it was still passing their tests, even if the voltage regulation wasn't quite what it was day one. But it's just kind of interesting to see like that level of quality after 10 years. I would fully expect this to do the same in 10 years.
Yeah.
What was the price
still
on
be
that
under warranty,
again?
wouldn't it? Oh,
250.
250.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for what, 10 years warranty, you said?
Mm-hmm.
I'm only repeating this because I'm not very smart. I'm like a parrot on your shoulder without hair.
All right.
Is that what's on the back?
Bald
there?
parrot. The most patriotic of all parrots. The bald white parrot.
Yes.
Yeah. Mostly found in Vancouver, Canada, strangely enough.
All right. Well, speaking
Bald
of
White Parrot, interestingly, the forgotten Philip Marlowe novel. It was the one. It was the one that Bogart passed on.
It was a cold and snowy night.
So,
speaking of white
things, yes. Oh,
Yes.
no, wait, Jesus, you can't say that anymore. Well, speaking
it's true.
Not racist,
speaking of the color white in a non-human context, there's another review, and it's the
Speaking of spiraling out of control.
yes. Watch live as we go out of business. The Be Quiet Dark Base 700 White Edition case. Sebastian did the review for us. We saw this. They teased it at CES, and he's got the case and did a full review. Tell us what the deal is here.
Well, from the moment I saw this at CES, I can remember it like it was yesterday. We walked into their suite at hotel.
And across the room.
It was across the room, Josh. It was exactly across the room.
Your eyes and its LEDs met.
That light bar met my eye, and it was magic. It was sitting on a coffee table, unobtrusively, just kind of doing its thing over there. And I walked over to it, and I was taken by its refreshing kind of appearance. This is a white case. This is apparently the second white case they've made. I thought it was the first, but they had a shorter run limited edition of a Dark Base 900 2 years ago. 3,000 of these have been made, and depending on how well it goes, I would hope they might consider doing this again, because this is really quite a different look for them. If you've seen Be Quiet's lineup, whether it's cases, power supplies, and their growing CPU, cooler, and fan lineup, it's all black pretty much. I mean, they have some white fans now as well, and they have this white case on offer currently, but there's a level of fit and finish. I think maybe the terms get overused a little bit as you read enclosure reviews, and this one actually really does live up to it, and it lives up to what you would think would be a premium enclosure. Like as you look at the pictures on the review, or if you're watching the stream, the top and front of this case are aluminum. So the biggest surfaces that are white that you will see are this very smooth, lightweight aluminum. The side panel, the primary side panel, is glass, but it is
Okay, can you
absolutely
stop real quick?
yeah.
Because I've got a problem. Can you scroll up a little bit, Jim? Just scroll up, stop, down, a little bit more, stop. Why is it always telling me what to do? Why is it always telling me what to do?
What is telling you what to do?
It says there in big letters.
Oh, well,
Screw them. They're taking my voice, man.
It's true.
But anyway, keep going. You're not my dad, Case.
Look, the Be Quiet branding, Josh, has been there for a long time.
I
You just need to get
know.
used to it.
Josh, let's not upset the Germans.
Oh, yeah.
It worked out very poorly in 1914 and 1939.
So
Yeah,
what is
I mean,
that
I
beside the
could just
power supply?
Beside the power supply.
Is that like a vertical mounted GPU area,
yeah,
or
yep.
why is it just sort of there? Okay.
It is. It's an optional vertical mount for PCI cards, usually GPUs, and it doesn't come with a kit. It's been a trend in the last year or two to have that vertical mount alongside. I think the case last week, the Corsair Carbide Series 678C had the same thing. I'm seeing that on pretty much all of these more premium mid towers lately.
And so the intake of the power supply is sucking off the back of the GPU, or the fans fighting each other?
I don't like vertical mounts unless you have a blower style cooler myself. So if you have like a Founders Edition or some card like that is designed to pull, like the 10 series Founders Edition designed to pull and go straight out, that would be fine. There's a little bit of space between that and the glass, so it doesn't choke out like it would in most cases, but I still would just recommend using a standard orientation. But one of the things about this actually is that you don't have to use a standard layout. The motherboard tray, as if we scroll to the interior pictures, if you're watching, the motherboard tray on this is totally modular. So it comes out, it has its own like rubber feet, and you can set it on your desk and build the system entirely on the motherboard tray. And this tray encompasses the back of the case as well. So it's sort of an L shape, and it has all of the expansion slots, and it's all this one like steel unit. And
that's not awful.
Huh. No, it's not bad at all. And what's interesting about it is once you get done with whatever you're going to do with the tray, I chose just to do like CPU, cooler, and put it back in. You can install your expansion cards on it too if you like. You can flip it upside down and install it on the opposite side of the case. There's mounts on either side. So you can make this an inverted layout if you wish. And I think that makes more sense if this did not have the side glass, because this is still set up to have the glass panel on just the one side. But it's interesting that it's offered. Regardless, I love removable motherboard trays. You don't see it very often anymore. And it's one of those kind of really high-end things. Plus, this one's totally decoupled. Like there's a rubber washer at every single screw point pretty much on this entire case, including the 9 screws that hold the motherboard tray in place. And they're like embedded in the metal so you don't lose them. So just a all around, as you build with the case, you just see little features like this. Like it has one of those slide out trays to attach your 120 or 140 millimeter width fans or radiators to the top. It has noise damping material panels lining the top, the front, and the rear side panel. It includes 3.5 inch hard drive trays. They're of that same variety that we saw with that Carbide series last week. It's something that Be Quiet's been using for a little while. And of course, at every point where your hard drive touches the cage, there's more of these rubber mounts. So they're kind of floating inside. You can put up to 5 in the component chamber. 2 are hidden down below under that PSU shroud. It comes with 1 extra. So there's 3 total in the box. And you can buy more. You can buy up to 4 more. And then it has default spaces for 3 SSDs. There's 2 brackets behind the motherboard tray. Other quick things I'll cover. It has a PWM fan hub. Like it has a powered hub that lets you control it through the front panel. So nice built-in fan control, has 4 different settings, and one of them is a pass-through that lets it just do like PWM settings off of your motherboard. And basically every little kind of extra you might think of or want in a case, I found this to have. Like the overall build quality, the convenience features, like the fan controller, and just really, really nice design. It's lighter weight than you might expect from its size, and I think that's mainly due to the use of aluminum. And then all of this with what I consider really tasteful implementation of RGB. Like in my pictures, I'm using a motherboard with RGB and a cooler with RGB, and there's lighting on the GPU. You don't have to do any of that, obviously. The only lighting on this case is just the strip that surrounds the front panel, kind of like a neon strip is the sort of effect that it gives. And I had it, you can connect it to your motherboard and it'll sync with your motherboard color scheme. So there's like an all purple thing going on in this photo and the review, but you can turn it off entirely, or you can manually select it with the front panel to, one of the main colors, or obviously, go without, but it's really well implemented. Like the cases I've seen that have front RGB generally have some sort of a cable going in, and there's like a power lead that goes off of it, usually like a SATA power connector. This has like copper pads, and when you pull off the front panel to access the fans, you can just see this row of 4 copper pads, and when you push it back on, it makes the connection again. So there's no wiring, nothing to line up. It just kind of happens automatically as you put the front panel back on. So just little kind of intelligent touches like that made this feel even more expensive. And the pricing on this is actually $199 for a limited edition case that's pretty high end, which I thought was reasonable, especially considering the case we looked at last week was $200. The one before that was $250. So there's a lot of cases in this like $200 price range for something that's considered higher end. And for this to be a limited edition of 3000, I don't know what you guys think, but I thought it was pretty fair, especially considering there is use of aluminum here. There's some of the higher end touches, and I saw it selling already. It was marked down $10 on Newegg direct from Be Quiet for $189 this last week. It's been selling for like $199 consistently on Amazon. And if you want the black version, if you don't care for the white, the black version is $20 less, so it's $179. So,
and temps and noise were good.
Yeah. I'm still trying to amass data so I can present charts that show like one case versus another case, but overall, good numbers. But we're talking like the loudest noise I got out of this with the current build setup was only like 33.5 decibels. Very, very quiet at idle. That was with the fans set to auto, which is a standard fan profile on the motherboard. And it moved enough air that temperatures were not an issue at all. We're talking CPU load. I measured 42 degrees above ambient, and that's with Core i7-8700K. So very good temperatures. That was with the Hyper 212 RGB cooler. So sufficient airflow, good temps with the GPU, like 50 degrees above ambient. It was actually only like 67 degrees was, I think, the high, including ambient air. So more than adequate cooling. Did a good job with noise reduction. There are quieter implementations. I think even Be Quiet has some quieter cases when they have that solid side panel with the additional layer of damping, but it's a good trade-off. Like you may be like a decibel or two louder with an all-glass side versus without, but I think the look of this case kind of offsets that. Like you're probably buying this white one with our RGB lighting more for the style than if you wanted just a totally silent enclosure, and of course they offer those too. So,
and an editor's choice award.
Yeah, I mean, if you can spend the money, I would be all about this case myself in that $200 range. I could not find any faults with it. It's extremely well made. I got the impression as I was building with it and over the course of a couple of days, like somebody with similar obsessive tendencies to me clearly had something to do with this design. This is a case designed by people who understand enclosure design, who understand the computer build process. And sometimes you encounter cases that look like they were designed for looks alone, or maybe they're very functional, but there are sort of like impractical steps you have to take to complete the process. And this was smooth from beginning to end.
So does anyone sell a white DVD-ROM?
Well,
I'm
Josh,
sure you could find them.
I have some, but the problem with the white DVD-ROMs is
That they're all
a little bit
beige.
off-white.
It's a tan.
Yeah, they're a little off-white.
Yeah.
You could retro bright one. You could go crazy with the.
But of course, there's no space for it in this, right?
No, yeah. So it's a moot point, really. I mean, you could probably find a white external DVD drive. I think
What's the fun in that?
Before.
Yeah, I have two. I bought one 4 years.
You have a white one?
Well, at the office, sure.
You know, I
Not
just thought of
this
something.
office,
It's kind of
but
funny. White cases in 2019 stand out, and they're kind of unusual. But just think back 20 years when everything was like a beige box.
Everything was beige.
Everything was on off-white. That got more and more off-white every year.
When you exposed it to sun, it got yellow.
Just go down to the hardware store, get a can of white spray paint, just spray the case down.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, be sure to, cover up that lens in your optical drive.
I've had one paint. I did one retro bright experiment this last summer. I had an old monitor I'd actually given to my sister years ago. It was a 17-inch KDS monitor, a CRT. And I was visiting and I saw it in her back room. I'm like, whoa, that's my old monitor. She's like, oh, yeah. I'm like, basically just like, can I have it back? I'm just like, yeah. So I took it out to my car while my wife stares at me like I'm insane. And when I got home, I was looking it over and she had put stickers all over it. And she's a lot younger than I am. These were like little like girly stickers, like ponies and stuff. And where they had been, everything around them had turned orange, and these were like white when I peeled the stickers off. So I had the outlines of like hearts and ponies all over this old monitor. So I got this peroxide stuff, like I don't remember what it's called. They sell it at beauty supply stores, which is the most popular method of retro brighting. Like the 8-bit guy does this stuff on YouTube. You like basically brush it on like paint. You put plastic wrap over the plastic. You put it out in the sun. I did this for 2 days, and the end result was the monitor looks brand new. Like no discoloration, no yellowing at all. Didn't mess with the logo.
Is it CRT or LCD?
CRT. And I'd taken it apart.
And sadly, the retro bright didn't fix that.
Well, the problem is when I reassembled it, I didn't do it right, and shortly thereafter, I killed it. So the monitor is dead, but the case looks fantastic.
But it doesn't make such great noises when they died.
It doesn't have ponies on it now.
It doesn't have ponies on it now, but now it has this cool feature where the horizontal hold doesn't work, so it turns on and then it shrinks and then it shrinks and then it shrinks and then it shrinks. So it's unusable. I don't know how to fix that.
Have you tried wiggling the cord?
I have.
All right. Well, let's jump into the biggest story of the week, which was Intel's Data-Centric Innovation Day. And I had to pause there because they've had a couple different names for this, I think, that they've referred to it by. But I think Data-Centric Innovation Day 2019 is the way to say it, or the official settled name. And what this was, now, right off the bat, this is the majority, actually everything here up front is going into enterprise. This is for enterprises and networks and big level stuff. This isn't anything that today or even in the near future you're going to put in your desktop workstation. But that said, it kind of points where Intel's going, and the things that they introduced, some of the concepts and some of the technology will make its way down into more consumer and enthusiast level products. So what happened here this week on Tuesday was Intel, they released products almost across their portfolio, hardware and software, that was aimed at solidifying or pushing forward their transition from what they call as a PC-centric company to a data-centric company. Now that transition isn't new. They've been talking about that for several years. Back in 2015 or 2016, I think it was, the former CEO Kranich said that this was where things were going. And then Bob Swan, who was interim CEO and now official CEO, has continued this. And their whole point here is the PC market as we knew it, the PC market that we made all our money in is shrinking and changing, and we need to find a better way to grow our business in the future. So they've been saying that for years. This is the first time that they've had a massive product launch where they specifically aimed their products to address that. Now, whether that's effective or not is, time will tell. But what happened, or what they did here with is they launched products or announced products in multiple different categories dedicated around the model they say is move faster, store more, process everything. And so I'll touch on briefly what they announced here, and then we'll talk about why. So move faster is like networking. Obviously, gigabit is way old news. 10 gigabit is old news for the enterprise. Even 100 gigabit, which is what they announced here, is starting to get old news with other companies like Mellanox. But what they announced is a new Ethernet chipset, the Ethernet Series 800, that can go to 100 gigabits and support some new technologies like application device queues, or ADQ, which is something that it's not like QoS, but basically it can tie specific lanes in your network to specific applications, and then beyond that to specific calls within those applications. So you're guaranteeing lanes or queues for data based on very granular criteria, so that your high performance critical stuff is never going to suffer, or can be at the very least predictable and consistent in its delivery over your network. Looking at storing, they announced Optane SSDs. One of them is an enterprise grade Optane DC SSD that now has dual ports for redundancy or enhanced throughput, depending on how you want to deploy it. And then the Optane QLC E1.L, and I'm not sure if that's the way to say that, but the E1.L is a form factor that's almost like a long ruler. And this is not proprietary, but Intel's one of the few companies to put something out in this form factor this far. This is a QLC drive, but it's not super fast, but this is aiming at Intel's goals to move data from cold storage, which would be the hard drive based, into warm storage. So it's a good price for capacity, not as fast as your faster SSDs, but able to be accessed much more easily in an affordable way. And this unique form factor, this long ruler style, can fit into a specially designed 1U chassis where they can fit up to 1 petabyte of total storage in that 1U. So they're aiming it at density and affordability for enterprise. The bigger announcement with storage, well, not technically storage, I guess, but is Optane DC persistent memory. Now, Alan talked about this last year. They've been talking about this for a while. Optane DC persistent memory is taking Optane, 3D Crosspoint Optane, and putting it on DIMMs. So you're interacting with the system through basically a RAM module style. So you have much faster throughput, or much lower latency throughput, and it elevates Optane, which has always been bottlenecked by traditional PCIe storage, to someplace in the middle between your DRAM and your ultra-fast NVMe storage. And the point with this is you can supplement your DRAM with Optane, which is cheaper and allows for more capacity. So DRAM's expensive. You can you could go out and spend X amount of dollars on DRAM, but not every application needs the maximum performance of DRAM. So what this lets you do is get fast enough performance at higher capacity. So if your application or your workload depends more on capacity than speed, you have DRAM in your system, add a few hundred gigs of this stuff, or terabytes even, and you can then, at a much cheaper cost, potentially increase your performance. Not every application is going to work with this, but it's something to look at. And this is something we could eventually see in the desktop as just a very fast cache, or even as a supplement for DRAM, depending on how it all shakes out. And then finally, they announced a bunch of processors. They updated their scalable line of processors, the bronze, silver, and golds. And then at the platinum level, they've got a new generation of 8000 series platinums, the 8200, and then the new 9200. These are all Cascade Lake, which is the latest server architecture. not a lot of changes at a very fundamental level. They were touting big changes in terms of specific things like AI inference workloads, but this is still Skylake. I mean, we're still at 14 nanometers. We're still at a performance level that there's not a huge jump in performance in a broad sense. So what they did instead is adjust their pricing tiers so that even though the parts themselves aren't drastically different, at the old pricing level, you're now getting more cores, more cache or something. So they can point to the pricing tiers and say, look at this performance jump. But if you actually put it back down to like a 1-to-1 ratio of cores, it's not a huge performance boost outside of those specific areas they've worked at. So before I jump into, I've talked a lot, before I jumped into why are they doing all this, does anybody have any thoughts on some of the hardware they've announced? And there's a few more things in here that they've announced that we'll touch on as well. But
like the dubstep field programmable array.
Yeah, sure. Like Agilex, you mean?
Yeah.
Agilex, whatever.
Yeah. It seems that IO has been really moving in leaps and bounds lately, and especially the past 10 years. I mean, from the birth of hard drives up to, the first SATA drives, things were really, really, really slowly improving. I mean, sure, we had 10K drives that, they were fast and the enterprise grade and SCSI stuff that were really horribly expensive. But now we've got to this flash-based memory, and from when SSDs, Alan started doing with the X25 or whatever the hell it's called, and up till now, I mean, it's just been massive increases in performance and IOs and capacities. I mean, that first drive that he got for what, $1,000 or something like, it was 80 gigs. Of course, too bad Alan is here to, wax fondly upon his memories in the storage world, but the stuff that we have now in between just NVMe for the desktop, I mean, the enterprise stuff that, who is that IO group that the WAS helped found? I mean, we don't hear anything about them now, but I mean, their storage solutions were super fast and people were paying that money for that. And now we've just eclipsed that kind of performance and density for, I mean, these high-end things are not inexpensive, but it's just all been trickling down, and the consumer and the people who want to price out a moderate enterprise system still gets a tremendous amount of power out of these for not a whole lot of money.
That's true. And so they've got a graphic here that they showed a lot, which is sort of this pyramid of how they're viewing the storage market. And at the top, you've got DRAM, which is the fastest. In the middle, this was blank initially. This is the problem that where persistent memory comes in. It's the need it addresses. Then you've got Optane DC, which is their enterprise grade, faster and more reliable, but still traditional solid state drives. Then you've got all the rest of the solid state. Then you've got your hard drive and tape storage at the bottom, and it's about moving everything up and filling in performance where needed. The one concern, though, is that with Optane DC persistent memory, because Optane is non-volatile, but DRAM is, you can't just plug it in and have it, or at least initially, you can't just plug it in and have it work. So they had to build application compatibility modes, and they've got two modes for that. One is going to be memory mode, which is where it's going to emulate DRAM in Optane. And that's going to be a little slower, but it's still going to give you the capacity increases. And then there's app direct mode, where going forward, applications can be aware of persistent or non-volatile system type memory and know what to store and where, and that will be your best performance. So there are some considerations there in terms of what the software side of this is going to look like to take advantage of this new hardware. But the question is why, and I'm not sure I did a good job explaining all of this in one. There's just a ton of stuff. There was like 75 different products and SKUs all announced. But the question is why are they presenting things this way? And the view that they put forward officially is that it's a data problem that they're looking to address a different market with the decline of the PC market. What can they view in its data? That's the point of the data-centric model, is we're moving to data. We're moving away from individual devices and platforms to data. And their point was, we're generating all this data. It's a tremendous amount of data. Only 2% of it can be analyzed with our current infrastructure and workload setups. So let's provide a portfolio of products from CPUs, traditional stuff, to newer stuff like Optane persistent memory, to the networking in between and all this, and their FPGAs and that can be customized for specific workloads, stuff for 5G networking. They're putting forth a menu of products that are all officially or technically geared and aimed towards addressing, managing, storing, processing all of this data. And that's their kind of like their service announcement, or their motto is this is what we're going to do. The other factor here though is AMD and Intel. It looks like Intel's going to lose on pure performance in some very important workloads against Rome, which is AMD's upcoming Zen 2 based server parts. And not only that, but they're going to lose on features too. Rome is going to have significantly greater numbers of PCI Express lanes, and they're going to be PCIe Gen 4. So it's going to be a lag there, because this is still at its core on Intel side. We're still back on Skylake, and we've got PCI 3.0 and limited PCIe lanes. They vary depending on the tier and the processor configuration. So Intel's facing the prospect that they haven't had to face in decades, well, at least a decade, of we're going to have our competitor come out with a part, and that part's going to beat us. Forget the price to performance ratio. I mean, they're probably going to lose there too, but we're going to have a part that's going to perform better. So we're providing, instead, we're going to look at it and say, okay, maybe we do lose there. Maybe this isn't the best performance versus our AMD counterpart at this pricing tier. But if you come to us, you can implement Optane DC persistent memory, which will save you money or improve cost, or both. Or you can use our advanced networking technology, or you can implement our FPGAs to your edge devices and integrate that all together. And we're providing a platform. Intel itself becomes the platform, not just the individual products.
Yeah, I think Intel has consistently had a lead in storage performance and I/O performance. So we look at the AMD side, at least on desktop, because I don't have much familiarity with the server side. You're talking about raw CPU horsepower from AMD, but over on Intel's side, they can offer you, like you said, Optane memory. They do consistently have better storage performance and better I/O performance. So we'll see how the new generation of AMD products perform. We're going to see some new platforms this summer, and I think we're going to see, for the first time, AMD's like home built, at least USB controller, right? They're going to have some of their own technology built into the new stuff, but they're not going to have necessarily an answer to Optane. And if you look at the most recent report of what Epic Rome has been benchmarking at, just from like leaks online, this is from March 29 on Tom's Hardware, they say that the 64 core part is a base 1.4 boost 2.2 gigahertz as of right now. Like this may go up, but that is significantly slower than that high-end part from Intel, the 9282, which is like the flagship 56 core part from the Platinum 9200 series. That has a base frequency of 2.6 gigahertz and obviously can boost higher. And I don't know what the single core boost max is. I don't see it here listed at Wikichip, but clearly, I mean, and memory bandwidth is crazy on this new Intel part too. This 12 channel memory. I don't know, Josh, do we know what is the memory architecture for Rome? Is that 8 channel? Is it 12 channel?
I think it's 8. I think it's
Okay.
2. Yeah, I think it's 4 memory controllers in that big I/O hub, and
Thought
so
it was
you
8.
can have a total of 4x4, so 16 slots that it can address for each CPU. I think in maximum, board guys are probably going to do something different. They may just do 2 slots per, just due to spacing and that. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure, and I'm probably wrong there, but. Yeah, you're looking at 16 slots max for each CPU.
It's going to be workload dependent. Like if you're looking at both of these, the Intel part is going to have higher single-threaded performance, I would assume, and that's as much a function of the frequency they're going to be able to provide as anything, with that higher base frequency, and then it.
Yeah, but if you're buying a 64th core, 128 thread chip, you're not worried about single core. You want a lot of work done through many processes and threads being thrown at that CPU.
I just wonder if AMD's RAM is going to beat it. If you have that much of a disparity in clock speed, is the extra core count going to help you that much, 64 to 56 cores across a multi-threaded workload?
We don't have
scaled
the
up by
SKUs
several
yet.
sets. Because you wouldn't just have the one chip going, right? So that's going to increase that thread count significantly.
Yeah, but again, we don't have all the SKUs and the speeds and feeds, and so AMD can do a lot of juggling with what they've got. I mean, they could do a 32 core chip that runs at 4.2 gigahertz on EPYC or even above that to kind of address certain areas, and then the slower, bigger ones, which will iterate from 32 to 48 to 64 or whatever. It's AMD has more leverage here because they have a more granular and flexible architecture than what Intel does. And Intel is kind of reacting to AMD. And I mean, these are 2 cores, I believe, that are kind of fused together on this high-end 56 core part. Or is it 58? 56, right?
56, yeah.
56, yeah.
56. And, we don't know all of the odds and ends about how they've integrated that and made it work. I mean, it's going to be glued together or dies, because otherwise, or is it? Did they announce that?
No.
Yeah, I think the thinking is it's going to be, some kind of glue in there. But, Intel's a smart group, and they've got a lot of engineers, and they're going to put up a fight. And AMD may have an advantage through the second half of 2019 because of process technology, because of how flexible their architecture is. Their use of a separate I/O chip with all the chiplets could be really, really good. It all depends on how the Infinity Fabric works and how low they can get the latency in between communicating in between the chips and the I/O and the memory, all that stuff together. Supposedly it's a lot better than it was in the previous generations, just because they've kind of changed around the topology. But yeah, Intel had no choice but to react and do something like this. I mean, it's a 400 watt TDP part. I mean, that's significant.
That's the big thing, right? Like AMD could, if they keep their power draw and heat down, become significantly more or significantly less expensive to run. They're already cheaper to go out and buy, but now you're looking at your power costs over the course of a year, and if it's significantly under 400, well, that's direct to dollar savings for you to cool it, for you to power it, for to do everything, which is a big thing now. And I mean, the D1600 series is a decent compromise. Like, Intel does have some lower cost or low power parts, but still, like, you're looking at some of these SKUs and it's like 400 watts is times, a dozen.
That's a lot of pull, and that's a lot of cooling. That's a lot of cooling in a 1U rack, and it's probably not going to be a 1U rack.
No, those won't be the 9200 platinums. God, no. Well, that's the other thing too. So you're not going to be able to officially buy a 9200 series platinum. I mean, I'm sure we'll have a video where Linus goes and finds ones on the streets of Shanghai or something, but you're not going to buy the
drops
part.
it.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
that's a given. But you're going to buy from Intel their specially designed servers that they're going to partner with manufacturers to distribute. So they have a design that they've created for that series. You can have optional air cooling or liquid cooling, and that's how you'll get it. You're going to get a complete package at that price level, and it's going to cost $30,000, $40,000.
No, easily.
How much again?
In the tens of thousands. You could probably get one for low 20s if you went pretty minimal on the options, but
how well would you be able to?
About a car here.
Yeah.
Since it is a lake architecture, how well would you be able to skip it across water? That's a pretty big package.
Well, it's a
got
big
some heft
chip
to it.
Yeah. If you have the angle right, you could probably get some distance.
Yeah, it is a
Get
fair size
15,
chip this time.
16 skips out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
but those resistors at the bottom is going to cause some friction with the water, and it's going to slow it down. So maybe you only expect 10 to 12.
Depends on the SKU you get.
So there's a lot of stuff that they announced, a lot of stuff that may never hit enthusiast level or consumer level, some stuff that will, but it's pointing to where this company's going. I also briefly mentioned kind of the rollout of this. So available today, and when I say available, I don't necessarily mean you can buy it immediately, but they're officially launching it. So, if you go to your vendor, if you're an enterprise, and start looking at this stuff. So available today is all the second gen scalable parts except for that AP level 9200 series. The Xeon D600, which Jeremy mentioned, which I neglected to mention, which is their lower power. It's the the successor to the D1500. So this is a Xeon part that is meant for lower power usage or lower power implementations, things like NAS devices, high-end networking equipment, stuff like that. So that's launching. And
they finally got to 10 nanometer.
And yes, it's 10 nanometer
on the
FPGA. Technically. Also launching today is the DC persistent memory, Optane DC, and then the D5 P4326 SSD, which is that long ruler style one we talked about. Available in Q3 will be the Ethernet 800 series, and then available in the second half is how they said it, will be the Agilix FPGAs and those high-end 9200 Platinum series parts. And then yet to be determined is their dual port Optane DC SSD for launch there. True. So stuff is rolling out, and it will be. I mean, we have to wait for AMD, which apparently we'll hear more about at Computex. We have to see how their platforms shake out and see what pricing and actual performance are. And
2 months away.
Intel's got 97%+ of the market, and enterprises and server deployments don't change overnight. So Intel's still probably going to hold a vast majority of market share for many years, but this could be where we see things finally turn and AMD starts gaining more.
Well, even the 14 nanometer EPYC stuff has already been slowly grabbing some market share. I mean, not much. I mean, maybe we could say that they're getting a larger percentage of growth than actual overall market share. But that's primarily because they've got a solid product, but Intel just can't make enough chips at 14 nanometer right now.
Well, so
and when you're Baidu or Amazon or one of those companies, you can't wait. It's like, no, we have to scale up now.
Right. Well, I mean, it was funny too, because on the other side, so Intel's having their issues with fulfilling demand. AMD, when it launched EPYC, had no vendor partners, and they had very limited, and it was at least 6 months into the product launch before you had actual choice in who you can get the servers from. And so that's ramping up, and that's going to continue to grow. So stuff to watch out for. Like I said, nothing immediately that's, if you're an enthusiast, like a gamer, or you're doing high-end workstation work on a sole workstation, nothing here is going to affect you in the short term. But it's worth watching as we see how Intel continues this transformation, especially now that Bob Swan is full-time CEO, which was announced last week as well. That was surprising because there was some rumors that he didn't want the job initially. He was the interim CEO. He was just going to keep the seat warm, but he took over. And then when he was CFO, he was also fully on board with this transformation. So him becoming full-time CEO, having that mindset of this is where we need to go as a company, that'll be interesting to see. But all right, let's jump into more news this week. We've got a couple stories. One of them somewhat surprising, and that is that Microsoft is finally backing off, at least a little bit, on the forced Windows 10 updates. This has been a huge issue for basically since the launch of Windows 10. But why don't you tell us what the deal is here, Sebastian?
Yeah, they had a blog post that went up today, and it's titled Improving the Windows 10 Update Experience with Control, Quality, and Transparency. And as you read through, they say that they're excited to announce significant changes to the Windows update process. And basically, what this amounts to is feature update rollouts are no longer going to be forced upon you. So you will get a notification that it is available, but then you're given a choice of when to install it. And they have added that pause updates for up to 35 days features to all versions of Windows. That was something that was in the Pro version before. And it says all customers will now have the ability to explicitly choose if they want to update their device when they check for updates. And this does not apply to devices that are at or will soon reach end of service. It says in that case, you will still be getting a feature update automatically. And feature updates are not the same as the roll-ups, like the quality updates, that sort of thing. It'll still be pushing those out to devices, but at least those major, like twice a year releases of Windows, like basically new versions of Windows, will not automatically download and install on you. Another important thing about this that I thought was very smart was most people, I would assume, like just your average person, doesn't really go into and check the active hours, which is kind of buried a little bit in settings. So for your average person who buys a Windows 10 laptop and never gets past creating an account and just using their machine, active hours is set by default to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I always change mine to like the maximum number of hours. I have mine set to 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. on every computer. And what this is going to do is it says it will have the option to let Windows intelligently adjust active hours based on their device specific usage patterns. And of course, Microsoft uses, whatever you think about it, they are looking at your activity on the computer. Whether or not you send it to them is something that you can toggle off in the settings. But they're going to use some of that data that they accrue as you use your computer to say, oh, well, they use their computer typically, in the evenings from 6 to 10 p.m. They'll leave you alone during that time period. So even if there is a roll up or some other update, it's not going to be bothering you. You turn your computer on during active hours. Theoretically, you wouldn't have to sit through one of those like 20-minute please wait, do not shut off your computer ordeals. So that's nice. I thought that was a nice touch. If no other reason than most people have never gone in and changed that, I assume, other than power users. So, and then the ability to pause updates is nice, but you only can do that so often. At some point or other, you will have to install some of these updates, but getting a notification instead of just when you go to restart your computer, see like update and restart and then update and shut down and not really having a choice. So,
yeah. Although
is this update mandatory?
Right. I mean, because that's the thing. They say feature updates. Microsoft is going to be the sole arbiter of what is a feature update and what is mandatory or required. So, but I bet
what's a feature or what's a bug.
Sure. So, but at least this will give folks a little more control in some situations. I mean, the whole deal with this was that when Microsoft went to this model, we as a society did it to ourselves because on the whole, people didn't update their Windows installations, which allowed for malware and viruses to spread. But Microsoft, when they went to this model, they had to get it right. They had to, if you're going to force updates on people, they have to work, they have to be fully vetted and minimal chance of issues, and they've screwed it up so bad. And
let's see. Just want to get this straight. As a society, we did this to ourselves. Jim
Yes.
Tanis 4/4/2019. Okay. Well, we know where Jim will be going when he is poached by the corporate world.
That's very digital justice of you.
Yeah.
digital justice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand that reference.
It's okay. I never understand any of Josh's references.
It's okay.
All right.
Well, you have an excuse.
You're a digital justice warrior, Jim.
Okay. DJW.
DGW.
All right. Good. Okay. So check for that new feature coming up in the May update for Windows.
Check for that mandatory update that allows you to pause updates and potentially not be forced to update further beyond that.
This will mean I have to install 1809, doesn't it?
I think so.
Well, 1909.
That's the new
they're
mainstream
50%.
version, Jeremy.
Yeah, they've broken 50%. It's doesn't take them very long at all.
All right. Let's check out the next news story, which is some news about AMD's 2019 plans that Jeremy found for us.
Yeah, as we sort of alluded to earlier. But yeah, May 27th is going to be very interesting because that's when Lisa Su is going to do a pre-Computex press conference and, more or less a flagship speech. And they'll be covering, Zen 2, because we are getting a desktop refresh, along with the X570 chips that they're going to show off immediately. Going from previous releases, there will be numerous flavors of X500 chipsets. And interestingly, because they usually go and get AS Media to do a lot of the tape-outs for their motherboards, AS Media wasn't actually ready for PCIe 4.0. So AMD is doing a lot of this stuff in-house, and that more or less means, more money for AMD, which is a lovely friggin' thing. But over the past couple of months, we've seen a huge jump, sort of as Josh mentioned, that there's been a lot of, the market share itself isn't huge, but the speed of growth is. So going back to Q4 2017, they had a 1% of the overall server room market. This past, at the end of last year, they were up to 3.2 because a variety of companies like HP, Lenovo, Dell finally started to sell EPYC processors, or EPYC-based systems. And at the same time, still taking advantage of the silicon drought coming out of Intel, we're seeing Chromebooks with AMD CPUs in them, which is, very, very new to the market. You're seeing Asus putting out some of their ROG laptops, and there's a Ryzen inside. It's really good news for competition in the market and AMD specifically, where we're seeing them starting to show up in more than just pre-built systems, which has been their bread and butter for a very long time, where you need to know what you're doing and be very knowledgeable about the market before you're even thinking about AMD, because you've got some vague memory of your brothers, sisters, nephews, uncles, sons, daughters, roommate saying that they had really bad drivers 20 years ago. And some people have just never forgotten this for whatever reason. It's going to be a very interesting thing. And as we sort of mentioned before with the Intel, we're going to see PCIe 4.0 coming out on AMD first. You're not going to get that for graphics card. That's going to be for the enterprise-centric stuff, just like it was for Intel. But it's a huge step forward, and it's AMD sort of getting there first. Again, they've had a history of doing that, sometimes arguably getting there first a little bit too early, so that there wasn't really much point in adopting those features, or holding off might have actually been more effective in the second generation, like say HBM does do much better than that first one, but they do take a little bit of loss on the first gen. But just hitting PCIe 4.0 is going to be a huge thing. It's going to be a big attraction for people that are picking up large, expensive server boxes they're not planning on upgrading for 5 to 10 years. And now they're not going to have to think about it. And AMD is really, really good at backwards compatibility, so that thing is still going to be kicking around. But as most of the people are interested in, we're going to be seeing Zen 2 on the desktop coming out. You probably Q3, maybe Q4. We're also going to see Navi. There's going to be a bunch of that to coming during Computex to let us take a look at what these chips are going to be able to do. And, of course, the new Threadrippers for those of us that like to sort of bridge the gap between workload and workstation-based tasks and gaming. It's going to be
I'm going to disagree with
one. Oh, yeah?
Disagree with you a little bit.
Good, because I'm getting
I think that
to cough all over the place.
I understand. So mute yourself and cough away as I hijack your little. I think we're going to see Zen 2 on the desktop sooner than you're thinking, because there have been rumors that the X570 chipset has had issues, and that's and they don't necessarily want to release Zen 2 without a chipset and motherboard designs that will definitely run PCIe 4.0. But if AMD does that, they're leaving a lot of money on the table, because at the beginning of summer, you're going to start seeing OEMs ramping up their designs that are going to release for, back to school as well as holiday. And if they're not offering that, it's going to be not great for AMD. Again, they've got an advantage in the process that they're using. It's a more dense design. It may not be that great in terms of being able to push clock speeds. I mean, they're going to be able to do that a little bit, but where they really get their money is manufacturing and how many dies they get in a wafer. And it's a bunch from looking at those chiplets, because those chiplets are pretty small. I mean, their IO stuff is going to be older 14 nanometer stuff where there's plenty of manufacturing capability from a variety of partners to be able to do that. But the 7 nanometer chiplets is really where they're going to make the money. And so I think that we're probably going to see certain X470 boards that may have been overbuilt that will support PCIe 4.0. Now there's some debate here that some of the basic chips that kind of power all this won't be able to handle that, but then there's others that say, yeah, these things respect that you do a BIOS upgrade on here and it's going to be essentially 4.0. And the biggest winners of that are not so much like graphics card, but again, storage. I think Phison has got their PCIe 4.0 being shown, and whether or not they'll get them out by a June, July timeframe is uncertain, but certainly second half of the year, there may be a market for them. And especially if AMD is successful in getting that into the enterprise, we'll see some use cases that may be able to do that. But the users that want 4.6 gigabytes per second of IO bandwidth, they'll may be able to do that even without an X570 based motherboard. And so I think AMD is probably going to release the chips far sooner than the official motherboards. And again, some of the overbuilt, overspec'd motherboards may be able to support PCIe 4.0 before these newer motherboards are available. So Computex is going to be interesting. And, what we find out and where AMD's share price is going to go is really going to depend on what they announce here and what they're able to actually deliver, because I think they're making a bunch of 7 nanometer chips, and it makes no sense to be able to have them sitting in a warehouse when they can actually start getting them out in decent numbers to consumers and OEMs who will utilize that and not care about 4.0 necessarily, but there may be an option for some users to at least utilize that functionality if that's their bag, baby.
Yeah, if and when it becomes useful for you and I and everyone listening to the podcast. Because I'm really, I love the idea, but I'm really not going to notice the difference in my storage just sitting at home and launching a Steam game. Yeah, there'll be a slight bit of an increase, but it's for the household user PCI 4.0, we're going to have to wait for stuff to catch up. We're going to wait for it's like eSATA, or sorry, SATA Express. It's useless until you got something you can plug into it. But I mean, I hope you're right. They just like get them out there. I'm sure they'll be backwards compatible, and it will be fun to be playing around with a motherboard that, you know, it's rated for PCIe 4.0. And eventually you'll get a BIOS update that you can do that, which would just be, you know, fun to play around with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll open up a whole new range of testing too of, is it really 4.0?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it really 5G?
One thing I was going to... No, it's 4.0E. One of the things from this source Digitimes report from Jeremy's article, one of the interesting things is that AMD is expecting to see significant share increase in the notebook space too, which is, you know, going to be a huge departure. We were talking about a minute ago, the back to school season will be coming. Manufacturers are going to be ramping up production of laptops, and there is a chip shortage from Intel currently, and that is going to be a big win for AMD, at least in the second half, well, that's the middle of 2019, because they were talking about Asus Tech, HP, Lenovo, Acer making orders for AMD CPUs for laptops, including gaming laptops. And you're going to see more. I bet if I walked into Best Buy this fall, I'd be seeing far more AMD powered laptops than this spring.
Oh, you will. Yeah.
So,
and if they go for the low cost Chromebooks,
yeah,
a AMD powered low cost Chromebook is going to be dirt cheap. It will be affordable for just about anyone.
Yeah.
Oh, we had to say goodbye to our special guest.
Kitty says AMD is playing the price is right across their entire spectrum of products, and 7 nanometer is key to their explosive growth throughout second half 2019.
Kitty said all that?
Calicos are always the brightest ones.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep pushing through the news here so we don't go too long. Next story is some more Optane news. Intel has extended support for Optane, Optane as a caching mechanism in terms of pairing it with a faster drive. It's expanded that support to Pentium and Celeron processors. I'm sorry, Sebastian, you wrote this up for us, right?
Yeah, when Optane came out, and if you watched Alan's review, I know his last review for Optane was the 32 gigabyte one. I think a year ago he did a video on that for us. And back then it was still like, this is for core processors. You have to have like a Core i3, Core i5, Core i7 to be able to use this. And it was a limitation in your BIOS. It had to detect one of those processors before it would allow the feature. And now, as long as your motherboard supports it, so this might require a BIOS update, the latest version of the Intel RST driver does enable support if you're on. Now, there's some confusion about whether it's 7th and 8th or just 8th generation. Tom's Hardware did a report on this where they said it was 7th and 8th. Following the link and actually looking at the release notes for the RST 17.2 driver, it does say that they're extending desktop support to Pentium and Celeron processors, but it says it starts with the 8th generation. So if you're on 8th gen, or if you're planning on an 8th gen system, this is kind of a nice thing where as long as you check with the motherboard vendor and they have this enabled, you can put together a Pentium system, get yourself one of the cheaper Optane drives, pair it up with some either, slower SSD storage or spinning storage, and take advantage of that on a low cost system where before you would have had to spend more on a CPU to get this unlocked on the same motherboard.
All right. So we'll check for that. Intel obviously pushing Optane, trying to expand its appeal, its base where it's applicable.
Oh, come on. It's not like it's been out for a year or so and no one's buying it.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't know that from their presentation. Apparently Optane is the best thing in the world. It does have its uses. I'll say that it does have its uses. All right. Next up is a story from Jeremy on the 2019 Hackaday prize.
Yeah. So they've been doing this for a better part of 5 years now, and I've always been impressed by it. It's just something that has been put together by them. They've usually got great prizes, and they're sort of building or giving a community that already exists a lot of things to be able to set out and create a project from scratch and sell it and win prizes along the way. Now, in previous years, it's been focused on the end product. So it was like a category for robotics or for biointerfacing. This time, they're focusing more on the process itself. So the stages are concept, design, production, benchmarking, and then communication of the finished product. And each person, each of those categories, you will walk home if you come out with the best of that, a 10 grand prize. The final winner, which is significantly higher than it has been in previous years, is $125,000 and a residency at a place called Supply Frame Design Lab, which I've never heard of, but it's one of those incubators where, you know, they take technologically gifted individuals and give them a space to work, give them the resources to create the stuff that they want to. And obviously from the bent of this particular design, go into production, into showing how good it is, going into getting the product out there and communicating to people that, you know, buy this thing, it's available, and making it. So this will be going on for a while. And for the most part, in order to start out, all you need is a well-documented design. You don't need an actual product. You don't need a damn thing. Just a really good idea and, you know, the demonstrating an ability that you can actually run a project. And they've also got a bit of seed money for people so the projects that are voted on, they've got $500 increments of money that they will give out to help you, you know, as you're hitting the prototyping stage and everything like that. So it's worth keeping an eye on, even if you're not interested in participating, and just anyone can go into it, because some of the projects that come out of this are just amazingly incredible. Last year there was a 6 Degree of Freedom arm that came out, which is better than anything on the frickin' market right now, using soft grippers and that. And it won, I believe, best overall for last year. And it was just, you know, some 20-year-old that had this idea and finally got the backing to do it. And it's now being sold just about anywhere, or the design is being used in major factories and other robotics places. So it's just a lot of fun, and it's worth keeping an eye out. And I put a link to some of the past coverage I've done if you're interested in what the past projects were and who won them all. Keep an eye out on it. It's just, you know, a hell of a lot of fun.
Awesome. Very cool. Speaking of incubators, my son's elementary school class has an incubator full of chickens, full of eggs that became chickens. And
did they have the heartbreak of that egg isn't doing anything, Daddy?
I think they all hatched, but the kids asked, what happens to the chickens? And the teacher says, well, the girl chickens will go and live on a farm and lay eggs. What about the boy chickens? And she wouldn't
get to go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
They're going to be put in a nice pot for everyone.
Actually, it's more of a grinder that has a metal chute that, anyway. Yeah. Culling. Eddie, let's
to get those beaks in there for a special texture, man.
Let's continue on here.
Without it.
So Jeremy, returning to you, you had a story about the return of a classic role-playing game.
Oh yeah, on the computer. We've known it was coming out for a while. If you've never played Paranoia, you missed out on one of the most ridiculously fun one-shot sort of role-playing game nights of your life. It was a perfect to do at a gaming convention where you've got a half dozen people who've never met each other in their lives. Because the idea behind the game, if you're not familiar with it, is you are living in paradise. The computer has made everything perfect. It has solved all the problems, and you are happy about that. If you do not answer yes to all of these questions, you will be killed. And then a clone will be popped up, and we will ask them again until you start saying, yes, I am happy. The computer is perfect. The computer is my friend.
Sounds reasonable.
Your job your job was to go out and get rid of all of the mutants and members of secret societies that have grown up and are against the computer. Of course, you yourself are a mutant and member of a secret society, as is everyone else in the party. So the idea is essentially to get each other into positions where you're allowed to kill off the person, along with such wonderful, helpful things as the best weapon that has ever been designed in the world, the thermonuclear hand grenade, which you can toss, with really good about 20 meters or so. It has a blast radius slightly larger than 2 miles. So very useful. It's going to be an interesting thing. It's Cyanide Entertainment and Black Shamrock that are going to be putting it out. And before probably the end of the year. And sadly, you're going to be controlling all 4 people in it. I hope they do get a multiplayer version where you can now be terribly, absolutely horrible to each other, which is the entire idea of this game. It's fun. And if you don't like that, please report to your nearest happiness officer to have a pill.
We could all do with a little more happiness pills.
Yes, you could.
All right. Let's see. Last story of the week, last news story is from Sebastian here. He's been checking out the crowdfunding campaign for something. It looks like he's got a model for us.
I do, as I probably destroyed my digital clock.
The Sentry 2.0 console size enclosure.
Yes, they sent one of these for review about a month ago, I think, and I have not gotten to it. I'm going to get to it this week or beginning of next week. But like you said, console size, this is about the size of like an Xbox. It's a computer case. It's one of those crowdfunded, very specifically designed cases like we've seen in the past from like Dan cases and N case with the M1. And this takes the idea of a mini ITX enclosure and it merges it with kind of what we saw from the Steam machines. This is like the Steam machine concept lives on. And I've seen a couple of different ones. Patrick Norton was showing me there's another company that has one that's similar to this, like this $200 price range. This crowdfunding campaign is asking $260 for this. The first version of this was very popular. It was considerably overfunded, I believe, when it went through its Indiegogo campaign. This one is about 37%, I'm seeing, as of today. It's only started on April 1st. So it's well on its way. And the appeal of this is you're putting a mini ITX system in a relatively small enclosure. We're talking about 7 liters of total volume, and it can hold a full-size GPU. It has just the length to have a full-size GPU alongside a mini ITX motherboard inside. This is not made to be ultra lightweight. This is not an aluminum enclosure. It's steel. And just from a brief hands-on with it so far, it feels extremely rigid. This is like thicker rolled steel construction, so it's pretty durable. And you can look at the video and the pictures on their website. It's an interesting idea, like the way everything's laid out. You've got like
wonder who
like
provided
quadrants. The fan in that picture right there I actually own. There is a Deep Cool Gamer Storm low profile fan that I bought a long time ago.
I know those colors.
Oh, right. Yeah. The Noctua fan is in one of these. They use different fans in some of these different clips in the video.
Oh, okay.
But, the Deep Cool fan has a bigger, the Deep Cool cooler has a bigger fan. So it's actually a little bit quieter under load. But anyway, just interesting. And I'll be taking a very close look at this and see how much I can cram into this and see what the thermals and noise are like. It's a very perforated case design. So I assume there'll be some decent airflow, at least through the one half of it. So interesting idea. And just another one of those, like, how small can we make a full-size gaming system? And I love the idea of continuing on with the Steam machine. And maybe in honor of that, I'll just install Linux on it and see what I can do with current titles on Linux.
If you're using a triple slot GPU, can you get a cutout and a blower on that little grill part?
That would be sweet, wouldn't it? I don't know if I can take just one side off. But yeah, that's a great mod for this. The scoop intake mod.
Mm-hmm. All right, so check that out at Indiegogo if you're interested. And Sebastian, do you have a review on the horizon for that?
Yes. As soon as I've wrapped up my latest case review going up soon, this is going to be on the test bench. So that'll be the next case review you see. Well, the one after next.
Right. All right. So
The next week or two.
you can look for that to see what Sebastian thinks. And he's reviewed a one or two cases in his day. So he,
Yeah.
kind of knows what he's talking about.
It's been too long since I've reviewed a really small form factor case. So the Dan case was the last one. So be happy to try that out again.
That was a while ago.
That's the end of the news. Let's jump into the picks of the week. I'll start. I've got for my pick, it's a monitor arm. Obviously nothing too exciting here, but monitor arms, I always like to use them because they both let you position the monitor correctly for the best viewing angle and ergonomics, but it also keeps the stand off your desk so you can have more room to pile junk and whatever else you've got on your desk. Because I know when I see those pictures on the Battle Station subreddit, I know that isn't what your desk looks like all the time. So this one is cheap, which is good because a lot of these monitor arms can get expensive, but it's also very basic. It doesn't have up or down adjustment, at least not immediate. Like you can adjust the angle or the height of where it connects to the bar, but you can pivot, turn, basically position it anywhere else other than up and down. So you get to the height you want, and it stays pretty sturdy. I've got it connected to a 27-inch iMac right now. No problem with the weight. And that iMac is heavier than any monitor you're probably going to put on there. So it's working well for that. And what I like about it too is that it's very low profile in the sense that if you swing the bar to one side or the other and then tilt the monitor so it's parallel to the wall, it's flush up against the wall. Whereas a lot of these other monitor arms, just the way they are, with the multiple joints and stuff, it's hard to get it all the way back. So this gets you the flexibility of having different configurations for your monitor, and $26. So this is the Vivo single LCD monitor arm at Amazon. There's a number of companies selling this form factor. So just, find the one that has the rating and the price that you need, and you should be all set there.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper than that system you saw at CES that had the flush arm on it.
Which one?
Trying to think. I think it might have been Asus. But the idea was that it came out, but you could stand it up and the stand itself recessed into the back of it.
Yeah, that was Samsung.
Samsung. Yeah,
Oh, it was a Samsung.
That's one of Samsung's new monitors.
No, but that was a whole monitor. Like that stand was built into it. They're not selling the low profile separately, but
fair enough.
Yeah. All right. Next up is this Jeremy with the display.
Well, I mean, if you're going to have an arm that can hold up to a 27-inch display, you might want a 27-inch display. And this one is it's a Canadian. This is Canadian price, but it's on a significant sale. And you get 75 hertz tops on a FreeSync display that's IPS. It's not going to blow you away and be the most amazing monitor that you've seen on the market ever, but at $200, it is not a bad way to go. It's relatively cheap and it's IPS. I mean, there are those that are going to scream and yell that it's 1920 by 1080, but as Sebastian and I were mentioning earlier on, sometimes the eyes just aren't good enough to deal with ultra high definition and still be able to see things. So this is not going to have any motion blur going on it, and if you're like me and getting a little bit older, so 4K is just a little bit hard to see, go for it. Why not pick up 2, 3?
Well, it's hard to tell from the pictures here, but I'm not sure this has VESA mounting capability. So you couldn't use this with the monitor arm. Oh, just glue it.
No,
okay.
I didn't look at that.
Yeah. No. But you're right. Just, some industrial strength adhesive will solve that problem. All right. So that's the LG 75 hertz FreeSync IPS dual HDMI gaming monitor with a ridiculous, 27MP 59HT-P. $200
Yes.
Canadian right now at Mike's computer shop. All right. Next up is Josh. Josh, are you muted?
It's not me.
It's not you.
It's not my problem. It's not my pick. Who are you talking about?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
fine. You know, if you're not willing to spend $200 on that Intel 660p drive that's been on sale for seemingly the past 3 weeks, and you want something cheaper, this is a good option. It's not a great option, but it's a good option. For $106, $105, you get a 1 terabyte NVMe drive that Jim had reviewed. It's not the fastest thing on the market, but it's $100. So if you want a game drive that you don't want to spend double the amount on to get double the space, don't feign, you won't feel like you need 2 terabytes. This is a great drive. I mean, it's not fantastic for, compared against other 1 terabyte NVMe drives like the My Digital SSD and some others. But those are 180 to $200 a pop. This is, it's going to be slower. It's not going to do sustained writes very well. But once you get the game installed, it's going to be faster than spinning Rust, and it's got a lot of capacity. So it's a nice mix of price performance for those who are in the market for such an NVMe drive for a game drive, or even just, an OS drive with games on it. It's going to work perfectly fine. If you're wanting to do something heavier than that, you're going to need to spend money elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. And this is I don't know if you said this is the Crucial P1.
Crucial P1.
Yeah, that's the product. 100 currently.
That's what I said.
On sale at $105 for 1 terabyte.
So close to that consistent 10 cents a gig.
Yep.
So close.
So close.
They're flirting with it, but they haven't gone all the way. They're on
some
second
have,
and third base. But yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting pretty serious, but there's no baby in the oven yet.
What?
Nothing. Jim, just mark this down. You can do a jump cut right there.
Okay, never mind. Babies and ovens. But why don't you tell us about your pick then, Sebastian? You've got something for us, also storage related.
Yeah, if you are a fan of fast storage, as we all are, one of the things that's been popular are those Samsung drives, like the T3, T5 is the current one. I have a T3. Lexar is bringing to market their new professional. The 1 terabyte is the one I picked just because I think that has the highest potential performance. I saw articles about this morning. They're launching this new SL100 Pro portable SSDs. They're USB 3.1 Gen 2. Apparently, they did not get the rebranding message, which I guess would put this at 3.2 Gen 2, but who knows? Anyhow, the actual potential performance of this are reads, like sequential reads of up to 950 megabytes per second, writes at 900 megabytes per second. So this has the potential to be some seriously fast SSD storage on a USB 3 port, and much faster than what Samsung is currently offering. So comes with apparently both cables, just like the Samsung drives. Seems to be a similar form factor to the Samsung drive. So I'd be very curious to get hands on with one of these and see what kind of real world performance you get out of this. You could almost just run this as a boot drive if your system supported it. I can see doing a portable Linux install you carry around, and with that kind of significantly higher than SATA throughput, this would be an interesting drive. It's probably going to be creatives, moving large video and image collections around. But 1 terabyte for, what is this, $230, $240 for this kind of speed seems pretty good.
Yep. And that's the Lexar Professional SL100 Pro.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's it for the show. Anybody have any closing thoughts? Josh was chuckling about something earlier. No, you're muted again.
He's just miming now. He's screwing with you.
Yeah.
I was reading something on Twitter that had nothing to do with hardware, and it was funny. It made me laugh
Okay.
like a clown. Think that's funny?
Twitter isn't
That
funny.
ain't funny. To make you laugh like a clown?
Okay, well,
way, Vinny.
Well, thanks for joining us this week. Hope everyone has a good week coming up. As just again to remind you, no show next week, but we'll be back after that. I need to get a mailbag for Josh because he's been asking about it, and I just haven't. I've been either traveling or sick, and just haven't had a chance to. So I'll say
No more excuses.
Because recording it is easier than editing and publishing it.
Yes. Well,
So I understand.
Sure. Thank you. So I'll put it out here. If you have a question you'd like Josh to answer of any kind and any content rating, just send.
All right, I'm gonna make some notes here.
Send him a tweet or send us a tweet or an email. Get it to us. Just tag it. Make sure that we're our individual Twitter accounts are tagged on it so we know. And I will also send out a tweet asking for questions soon, maybe tomorrow, and then we'll have Josh record that in the next early next week, maybe whenever his schedule allows, and get that up for you. And that maybe that'll be like a nice substitute if we can have that published next week instead of the podcast. But no promises because I'll be gone the entire week almost. So I'll do what I can. But
Okay.
Awesome. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and have a great week. We'll see you next time.